Welcome to another training video from XMPRO. Today we will be looking at the control select box and how to use it in App Designer. So as you can see, I have a blank page here, and if I want to add a select box, I can find it under the basic controls called select box, and to add it I simply can drag it. But let me add layout control first, like that, and in there I will add my select box. So as you know, a select box is just a drop down which shows the user some options which one can make a selection from. Now to configure it, we have a few options in block properties. Starting with appearance, we have a standard option to control the visibility of the control, and then we have the standard styling option, which has been explained in many of the other videos. Then we have a placeholder, which basically says if no value is specified, what should be the background or the background text or the placeholder text that should be displayed, which can be simply something like that. And then if no value is specified, you will see that. Tooltip is self-explanatory. You just add the text you want to be displayed when the user hovers over the control. Show clear button basically shows a button which a user can use to clear the value that he has selected. Then if we go to behavior, we have standard options like read only and disabled. And then we have a spell check option, which basically tells the browser if the spell check should be enabled or not enabled on this control. Now, in order to configure this further, we need to give it some data source. As you know, a drop-down is supposed to show a list of items that a user can select. So I will go in data source, and for this control we have two options. Either we can choose static items or a dynamic data source. A data source comes from an outside third-party system via the connector, but static items can be defined straight away over here. I'll do that for an example. Let's say we want to capture asset type, which can be fixed, and fixed can, let's say, have a value of 1, or it can be movable, which will have a value of 2. So these are the items that I have defined, and they will be displayed on runtime as a drop-down list. So I can save that much. And one last thing I would like to do is, let's say I want to give it a default value of movable, which was number 2. So I'll give it that value. And now when we launch this app, we will see that I have a drop-down which has 2 values that can be selected as we defined. And the default value was movable. I have my clear button showing up, which I can use to clear the control, and then it will display my placeholder. Now let's go back and look at how we can assign this control a dynamic data source. I'll use the one I have, for example the furnace one, and that's it. It has a data source. But when you use a dynamic data source, you also need to come in and define out of that data source what column or what item should be displayed as the display expression. So basically, the data source might be sending you 5 columns, but you don't want to display all 5 of them in the control. So I can choose that I want name to be displayed, and the value which should be captured should be the corresponding asset ID. So once I do that and I launch my app, it will go ahead and load that from the third-party data source, the list of items that it should display. And then you can see that it is displaying the names, but in the background it will be storing the asset ID. And this is how you bind the control with an external data source. Lastly, if this control was part of a data source bound container, for example this container which I have given some data source to, I can then go ahead and bind its value to a dynamic item which is coming from my data source, and then it will take the value that is sent by the external source. So this is how you use a select box in App Designer. Thank you so much for watching.